Hey, what is going on? You are watching, listening to Tags Live, aka Talk About Gay Sex, the live version. That means it's Wednesday night. I'm your host, Steve V, alongside my co-host, Kodi Maurice Doggette. How the hell are you?
Hello, darling. I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing today?
Good. Happy hump day. What's your drink of choice? I know you're not going to tell me.
You are so shady. I love you. I'm
Cheers
drinking
anyway.
water. I'm drinking water straight from the tap.
Okay, we know that's not true. Anyways, moving
It's Jersey
on.
juice. It's White Claw.
This is episode 305, and a little bit later in the show, we are really excited to bring on our special guest, Eli Martin of Sniffies, which is going to be so cool. I
Yay!
know. He's
So
coming
much
on
fun. I
in a
can't
little
wait.
bit. We have so many questions for him about the cruising web application, and we are ready for him. I hope he's ready for us. But we checked in with him. Yeah, I think he is. So we've got a lot to cover, though, before he graces us. The other day, Kodi, on Tag's podcast, episode 304, you were
Mhm.
on the show with Jeremy Ross
I
Lopez.
was. So much fun.
Yeah, so much fun. We were talking about a guy that wrote an article on The Advocate about being HIV positive for, I forget how many years, but he's seen it through the 80s, 90s, is still positive. And he did a really good
Mhm.
piece on the stigma then versus now, the stereotypes, then the demonization of just being positive, and
Yep.
how more and more people like himself are comfortable coming out being HIV positive. And it struck me because we still don't have a cure, right? And yet
Yeah.
there's preventative measures, but there's been a couple of stories that kind of piggybacked on Don't Forget, if you will. And there's a really great movie about to come out called Tick Tick Boom. And it's
Oh my
based
God. I
on
can't
the
wait.
yeah, I can't wait for it. It's based on the autobiographical one-man show that Jonathan Larson, who you
Mhm.
guys know wrote Rent,
Yeah.
right? So Jonathan Larson wrote Rent, and Tick Tick Boom was his kind of one-man show. Well, the one-man show is now a movie. You're going to see it in the theaters, but also on Netflix. And it's about a young composer. It's going to be played by Andrew Garfield as he
Love
tries
him.
to make it in New York theater scene. As the years tick by, he struggles with personal woes and bears witness to the AIDS epidemic in devastating force, all the while working on a musical designed to change the face of theater forever. And we know what he's talking
Nice.
about. He's
It's
talking
true.
about Rent. And this
So
was the real life story of Jonathan Larson. Andrew Garfield, who you told me is
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man,
I know, right?
will
He's
star
the
along.
second Spider-Man.
Oh, okay, yeah. I forget. I don't like the first one at all.
Tobey
And
Maguire?
no, whatever
Why
happened to him?
not?
I don't know. I just
I
don't.
don't I don't
Does
know. After
nothing for me.
Spider-Man, I
But
Well,
Spider-Man wasn't
Andrew
even my
Garfield is adorable, so
okay, got it. And Andrew Garfield will star alongside queer actors Alexandra Shipp, Robin de Jesus, who I'm a big fan
wow.
of because he was in, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Robin in Boys in the Band on Broadway?
Yes, he was. Yes,
So
he was.
good.
He was also in the Netflix movie too.
Yes, and that movie, you can watch that, Boys in the Band, on Netflix as well. And MJ Rodriguez, so
I cannot. When
excited.
I saw that, I was like, "Oh, done. I'm watching this now."
Emmy nominated. Judith
That's right.
Light will be there, who we love. Joshua
Oh,
Henry, Bradley Whitford, and Vanessa Hudgens will also star. And
oh.
Tick Tick Boom will mark. Oh, you're not a fan. I don't know who that
um,
is, really, to be honest.
she got yeah. You don't need to
Okay.
know. We'll talk about it later.
On the after show? We'll talk about on the after show.
Yeah,
Okay. Tick Tick
yeah.
Boom marks the directorial debut of composer Lin-Manuel Miranda of course, In the Heights and Hamilton. And the movie arrives in theaters and on Netflix November 19th. I think this is so great because we everybody knows Rent. Everybody
Mhm.
knows the legacy of Rent. Everyone knows that it dealt with HIV in the time that it was actually happening and brought awareness to it. I think things like this, we need to be reminded of it, and in sort of historical terms, Kodi, but also in a positive light. And this is
Yeah.
only going to do that by Jeremy Ross Lopez, for example, our co-host, grew up, I think he was born in 1991, and
Wow.
watched The Normal Heart and learned and had such empathy alongside watching Pose for an era that he perhaps didn't grow up in, or didn't grow
Yeah.
up in, the AIDS
So
epidemic.
it's a way to teach the children. It's so wonderful.
Yeah, and it's
And you also
so, yeah, go ahead.
you get a glimpse into like the beautiful mind that came up with the masterpiece that is Rent. So I can't wait to watch it. And like I said, Andrew Garfield is so cute, so that helps. He's easy on the eyes.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Jonathan Larson, who wrote Rent, we were doing a little bit of research before we got on the show here, and we read this thing about Larson, who wrote Tick Tick Boom,
Mm-hmm.
and he, in 1996, he passed away, which we think from AIDS, but
Mm-hmm.
he passed away right before the off Broadway of Rent debuted. So like the day before, I think it was
So
to
sad.
debut on off Broadway, which he didn't even get to see the legacy that
Yeah.
it continued to have, and the impact that that story has had, not just for our community,
Mm-hmm.
but for the general mainstream public. I mean, I can't tell you how many times my straight brothers and sisters have quoted or sung a song off that.
I'm
Just,
singing one right now in my head.
which one would you sing?
La Vie
Three,
Boheme. And also
160. I love that.
I will. Such
Yeah,
a
sing
good
a little
one.
bit.
No, I
Okay, yeah, no,
not, I'm
Teddy
not
let us
warmed
know
up
that he
yet.
did not have AIDS. Thank you very
Yes.
much
Thank you,
for
Teddy.
clarifying that. And you know what? We did read that, but he did die in 96, right before he saw the legacy of. See, this is why I love our live show, because
Yes.
we were trying
The
to like clarify
audience.
something, and then we get checked on that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Because, anyways, check that out. Tick Tick Boom, November 19th. Everyone has, for the most part, Netflix, or you can watch it in a theater. And on that note, we also wanted to talk about another related. Health and Human Services have announced a huge commitment for medical care, medication, and essential support services. A huge infusion of money for people living with HIV was announced today by the Department of Health and Human Services as part of its funding for the Ryan White HIV AIDS program. And HHS will disperse $2.21 billion to cities, counties, states, and local community-based organizations this year. The money will fund, treat, and services for hundreds of thousands of people. And this 30-year-old Ryan White HIV/AIDS program pays for HIV services for now for basically low-income Americans, or about half of all people diagnosed with HIV in the nation. And you and I, Kodi, were talking offline in our production
Mm-hmm.
meeting how
Yep.
important this is on when you don't have insurance, and when you are from a background maybe that doesn't give you the benefits of, we were talking like here in New York City, we've got Callum Lord, and you can kind of get Truvada. Probably you could probably get on, if you showed up and you were HIV positive, in cities like LA, the big cities.
Yeah.
But what
Oh
if
yeah.
you weren't and you found out? And like we were saying offline, it's, yes, thank God for Truvada and lower cases of HIV, but it's still possible to get it. And things like Truvada aren't 100%. And
Yeah.
what if you did get that? And what if you didn't have access like you do in New York? You would be at wit's end. And I'm so happy that they're putting billions of dollars into this. And we're not forgetting about our HIV positive counterparts that are in our community.
Yeah. It just warms my heart to know that that people living with HIV are going to be looked out for, even in the smaller communities and things of that nature. So I'm so happy that they passed this.
Me too. This is really, really great news. All right. Well, the story that's been making the waves, Kodi, that I'm sure you've all by now have heard about, is gay Melania Trump staffer, a gay Melania Trump staffer, y'all, allegedly was fired over a Grindr account. They say allegedly because, as you may have known if you watched the news, former White House aide Stephanie Grisham has written this tell-all book. And during the Trump administration, the White House fired a gay staffer for Melania Trump after Secret Service discovered his Grindr account, according to former White House Deputy Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham. And this is in her tell-all memoir that she's been making the rounds all week called I'll Take Your Questions Now, What I Saw in the Trump White House. Grisham wrote in her book that Melania Trump's chief of staff, Lindsey Reynolds, told her that in 2018, one of Grisham's closest friends in the administration was fired because of a security clearance issue, reported Insider. And the fired staffer had worked for President Trump for over 3 years. The section of the book where the incident is discussed is part of a larger discussion about the actions of former White House Chief of Staff John Kelly, who was known to fire people left and right. And he was just, if you just got on his bad side, but heaven forbid you were on Grindr, right, Kodi? And I don't know. It's just, I think Grisham in her book, I was watching a different piece on this, and she essentially was calling out Melania for saying, because this guy worked for Melania, and Melania did nothing to stand up for this guy. Everything's alleged, but it is true that I think he was.
I believe it.
You believe it. And I think my first question that just comes, what's more shocking or surprising to you, that there was a gay person working under Melania or the administration, or that they didn't think that this would be like that, I can just be on Grindr and not, like, I think if I worked in Washington and I just chose that path, like here we have, like, almost, it's like I wish we could write off in our taxes, like we're going to the Cock here in New York City, which is a cruise bar, and aside from getting a cocktail that I want written off, I'm going to write off, I wish I could write off a blowjob because it's for the show. You know what I'm saying? And or maybe I could write off a blowjob.
We always talk about research,
but we talk openly about our show. I think if I chose the Washington political path, I don't know that I would really be on Grindr, although it's not, it's not against the law. Maybe in the Obama administration, I would be on it. But what are you most surprised about?
I think the surprising part here is that a Trump staffer thought that he could get laid on Grindr. I think that is what is really shocking here, because I've seen plenty of Republicans on Grindr, and I did not want to sleep with.
It made your dick go.
I was like,
that's so funny you say that, because I dated a guy back in the 90s, and we hit it off. We met in 1994 in a common ground in New York City when I lived in San Francisco. He lived in Texas. So shout out to our Texas listeners. We love you.
Hey, Texas listeners, we love you.
But this one Texas guy that I dated, I'll never forget. I went out to visit him. It was lovely. He took me to all these places. I even did like country line dancing at one point. Okay. But at one point, I was sitting in his office, and he had a biography of Ronald Reagan.
Oh my God.
And and at that time I used to be more combative than I am now. I was really combative. And I was like, why do you have this book? What's this all about? I can't believe you would have the biography of a president that never supported HIV. And this was still like in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
Not that long after. And he was defending him, and we got into such an argument, Kodi, that I cut the short close and called American Airlines and was immediately on the next flight out.
You called the airline? You didn't even
I called the
air.
No, because it was that upsetting to me. Because
you called Olivia Pope, get me a flight right now.
Kerry Washington. Yeah, exactly. I wish I could have called my helicopter and said, oh, hell no. But yeah, I just think it's so interesting in the Trump administration. It reminds me of when we see, we got to bring in our guest real quick. Just last story.
Yeah.
When you see Trump on these current tours, and in the background you see gays, or not gays for Trump, Latinos for Trump, blacks for Trump, and you're wondering what
are they thinking? So yes, my question is, what was
Eli, go ahead and grab this spot because we got to bring you into the conversation.
Hi,
oh my
Eli.
goodness.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Very good. Welcome to our show, Eli Martin of sniffies.com. We've been talking about this for a while, and yeah, super excited that you're here on the show today to break down all things sniffies. How you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing really good. Midweek, hump day, getting through it.
Absolutely. Well, you are, what's your title over at Sniffies, or do you have one? Because I forgot to ask that.
No, I'm the chief marketing officer.
Oh, fabulous.
Awesome. Yes. And Kodi has the first question for you, and we've got so many for you. So let's make our time use wise.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just wondering, what was the great epiphany that brought on this wonderful site that is Sniffies? Like, how did it come into the world?
Yeah, so the founder is this guy, Blake Gallagher, that I've known for over 15 years. And he was the one that came up with this. And this was like back in the day when things like Craigslist and things like that, you could find these like really fun kind of adventurous, anonymous things to do. And then obviously after that, Grindr and stuff came along and, scratched that itch. But he felt like there was still a lot of things missing and more of something that could help people in more of like a cruising situation that none of these apps or old sites were really that good at. And so he thought of the idea of Sniffies and launched it in Seattle. And so it was an interesting city to start it into. I think Seattle, I don't know if you guys know, but like it's always been kind of a kinky city. And I think a lot of people like don't think of it that way, but I grew up there and I definitely think that. But it very quickly caught on. So it's something that some of the early days of advertising was literally putting ads on Craigslist being like, oh my God, I had the hottest hookup on Sniffies. And then like literally you'd see more and more guys on the map like every day. And it took off.
And just to be clear, so we get the nuts and bolts for people that are listening that don't know, Sniffies is around, you told me offline, 4 years old, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And on top of that, it is a web-based application. So in other words, you go online on your laptop or on your phone. It's not like an application like we're known for some of the other names that we won't name right now that live on our app. And what was the point and purpose of having it being a web-based application versus, say, an application that lives on our phone?
Yeah, absolutely. So, also just to go into the main difference of like Sniffies versus the other apps, first when you open the app, and we still call it an app, even though it's a web app, like you're saying, it just runs through a browser on your phone, but acts and feels and looks just like an app. But you're looking at a map, and the big thing about it is you're looking at uncensored content. And so that's a major difference for us. And a lot of people, when wanting to have like an anonymous hookup, they're not wanting to put their face out there and stuff like that. And the censorship rules through the App Store are actually pretty stringent. You've probably seen like in the last year that there's been some changes that the other apps have taken advantage of being able to show underwear or something like that. But I think the whole fun of Sniffies is like literally you open up and it's a map of mostly dicks and asses, which is always a fun thing to look at.
Hey.
Yeah. And I mean, on that, so we know it's a web-based application. And, one of the things on the difference of, say, we'll just say the names Grindr or Scruff is, you were telling me offline that the difference between, say, a grid versus a map, right? So the applications have more of a grid, and we joke on my friends, like I'll be on the beach with my friends and turn it on, and I'll be sitting next to somebody, and we'll both have, say, Scruff open, and I'll be like, on here it says like you're like way farther away than you should be, but yet you're like right next to me. Is yours using a different application that is a lot more precise?
No, so like all these apps are using the same GPS kind of technology that we have in our phones, but for the sake of just safety, like everyone has a little bit of randomization on those, like when you're saying how close someone is to you. I'm sure you've used like Find My Phone or something like that, and it's pretty accurate about like where it is. And so like these apps could be super accurate, but even with Sniffies, when you're looking at a map, we're purposely throwing off the location slightly, just so if you are within 10 feet of someone.
Okay, but let me stop you there. But are you a little bit more accurate because you use a map base than say?
Yeah.
Because the other ones, I guess, for the sake of the question,
No, I think to explain like why the map, I think, works better for us is, we're trying to reinvigorate a time of cruising. And so when you're looking at where people are, you're not just trying to see who's like in your backyard or whatever. You're trying to see like who's maybe at a local gay bar or, at the park or wherever.
Or the airport, because that was one of my questions. Will it say things like the airport? If I was, let's just say I was at JFK and I turned it on or I went on, would it show me other people at JFK?
It would. And so we have essentially cruising locations are added by users. Initially, we added some of these like main locations, but when it's actually labeled as a cruising location on the map, a user at some point labeled that, and it's all like user generated feedback. And we actually need a certain amount of people to be checking into these locations for them to stay active on the map. So it's trying to keep it up to date because, like something might disappear or be torn down or whatever. So it's all based on the users to keep it up to date.
Okay. And I know you have a question, but one more kind of nuts and bolts thing that I wanted to just clarify when I had my pre-interview with you, Eli, is that you say it's primarily here in America or English speaking states or countries, or explain that a little bit more so people know we do have an international audience.
Like 98% of the guys on Sniffies right now are in the US. But we've made it available where you can get to the website from pretty much anywhere in the world. We've optimized it for all English speaking countries. And so the only difference with that is we have it available on servers that are close to people in English speaking countries. And so if they jump on, it's not trying to like pull data from the US or something. Because all of this is run off servers. So to keep it super fast and have that, like
real time.
Real time, you have to have the servers close by.
Okay, Kodi, go ahead.
Okay, so we mentioned that it's a map-based application. I was just wondering if there were any other like bells and whistles that kind of any features that separate it from the Grindrs and the Scruffs of the world out there.
Yeah. So obviously the first thing you see is the map. Another really fun feature that we have is this global chat feed, which is in the right-hand corner. And essentially it's like a poster board for your hosting status. And so you can be like, I'm in my car right now, or I'm in my apartment or my hotel or wherever. And but you can also like add notes to it. You have to write in it. You do have to be upgraded. It's one of like the upgraded features, but people, it's hilarious to just look at if you like seeing kind of like personals essentially, because people write, all sorts of fun things in there. And another thing that we just launched, which is super fun, is we reintroduced groups, but we had to rethink it a little bit, obviously with COVID. And so essentially when you're making a group, it notifies you right away that you should be following all your local guidelines and all of that. But then it goes through this super fun prompts of like how you creating your groups. And we just launched a little video for it. It kind of went viral on Twitter, and we got a little bit of hate from some straight people, I will say that, but it has, I don't know, have you guys seen the different options for groups yet?
I have, and I love the option of I'm into group sex. So to me,
Okay.
it's a winner. You know,
Who isn't?
It's very colorful options once you get in there. But then obviously the last thing is places, which is, fully integrated into our map. Is like I'm saying that we're pushing more towards like in-person cruising or like in-person meeting. And so the idea is that we're not an app that's meant to be for people just to chat forever, but they'll meet really quickly because they either see a person at a location, they meet there, or also there's kind of this emergent feel in the app because the anonymous features of it too. So I guess that's one last thing that no one else has is you can log into our app with the click of one button, and you don't have to sign up. You don't have to create a profile. You can be looking at the map. And so this has made it really helpful for guys that are more under the radar or more DL. So they can try things out. And that's, a big thing for us to be open to people across the spectrum.
Nice. Sounds so. I love it, and we have some questions that I want to definitely get to. I assume it's Lucas who asked the question: do you have a saved profile, or have to sign in and create one each time? Well, it sounds like with what you're saying, you definitely do not have to, but can you do both? I guess
you can do both. And so to use a lot of the features, you do need to create a profile. But to just get on the map and talk to people, you don't. So you can just, and which is also a nice, because that's kind of a barrier to entry for some people to try new products. So hop on an anonymous account, check it out. If you like it, create your profile. And then the whole thing with your profile is obviously your chats are saved, everything's saved. You can pin people to chat with them later or whatever, like your favorites and all of that.
I love it. Well, I put it out there to our listening audience on some people to write in about sniffies, and Steve A wrote in and says, I like it better than Scruff. Sniffies, I get more straight guys who are just sniffing around, his words, where on Scruff, which is what he uses, they don't want to unlock half the time. He feels like on Sniffies, there's less talk. Guys on Sniffies are ready to go. He lives in Long Island. On other ones, sometimes it's about like the drugs, and he thinks it's a more mature crowd. So there was some love showing on how it's worked for him. And yeah, I think that's really good. We also had another writer ask a little bit about safety precautions because he's in Ohio, and he wants to know, because of the location-based service. I mean, you sort of alluded to it, that you use sort of the same technologies as all the other ones do, but he was wondering, he had some guy that he turned down, and that guy was like threatening to kind of come his way. And so I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about, I know you and I talked about it offline in our pre-interview about safety and what you're really doing, because we all know stories about just really horrible things happening on some of these apps.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's super important and very important to us. And I think, especially in a case where there's like harassment or something like that, the best thing to do is to immediately report it, because that's, sometimes we can catch it without it being reported, but most of the time we just need to know. And then when that happens, we can, he can obviously block the person, but like what you're saying, maybe that's not enough. And so,
or what if he like found your location before you blocked him, right?
Correct. So, if he's on the way, maybe you need to call the police. But
you're right. Yes, exactly. To your first point. Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, to protect yourself. Like, will say that and maybe this wasn't the case, but like he was having someone harass him and logging on to different accounts and stuff. Like, one thing that we can do that goes a little bit further is we could IP block that person. And so, like, if they were ever like harassing him from their phone or another account in his house, like, we could completely block that. But then also within the app, you can randomize your location. And so if that's like another upgraded feature, so like if you were personally feeling like you don't want people to know, even within whatever radius, 10-foot radius of where you are, like you can randomize it as much as you want. And you can also take yourself off the map if you want to like look at it like anonymously.
And you know what, to your point, Eli, what I thought was really cool when I went on there a few times, This is how I would probably use it. I noticed somebody I was like into. Okay, I like their dick. It was like really nice, and they had their dick pic on there. But they were literally running their day, and they were saying, "I'm going to be at this location, and then I'm going to head off to almost Craigslist-y, right? Like you
Right,
said."
right.
And said, "I'm going to be at this
The
park
Container Store, like
at
you said
6."
before.
Well, it was. I know. I think it was the Container. And then, or maybe I made that up. But then they were going to head to some like park in New Jersey, and I kind of like that because it does hearken to the way cruising and our lives really run. Our days are like on the go. I'm often, yes, I am at the Container Store, but then I'm at the Cock a little bit later, and then I'm at the
Yeah.
diner after all that, and I'm at the airport getting out so no one captures me, and at least in my mind. But I mean, I like that, and that's how I would roll on this app, and I think that's kind of cool.
I like that.
Yeah. So you can put. You were telling me though offline too that you like tell us a little bit of what you have in place. Say, I think you were saying even the FBI, a direct contact.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, so I think we were talking about just more moderation and safety within the app, and so, I don't know exactly what all the other apps are doing, but we've had cases where if the police do reach out to us like with a warrant or something, and this does happen, on our app, it happens on all the other apps. You hear in the news. We immediately, as long as it's legit, like comply, and so we have all of the protocols to do that correctly. And so essentially we can like take data and put it on like a special server that only they can see, that's password protected, and then it self-destructs after 7 days. And so, I mean, data privacy for us is super critical and number one. And so that's something that also we don't do, and a lot of the other apps do is they sell the data, so like we have lots of data and we're collecting more data just so we can build a better app, but we're not selling that data. And so that is a big difference. But back to like moderation and stuff, I mean, like we also use machine learning and AI to try to catch these things sometimes before it could cause a problem. And so that can be flagged in our system. And then we'd have a live moderator check it, to make sure. And that could be a lot of different things, people trying to sell drugs or, do something harmful. And, we obviously
age requirements,
all of that. So if there's anything going on like that, we take care of it, and we're, because we want to make a safe place, for everyone.
Real quick before we get into some fun stuff, what's some things you can get what's the tiers that you can quickly tell us about that I know will benefit you, but what do we get if we want to become more of a premium user of Sniffies?
Yeah, we actually covered a bunch of the premium ones today. So like your basic account, you're talking to people, you can share photos, all of that, look at the map. But once you upgrade, you can use the features like the global chat feed, like if you want to post your hosting status. Also the new groups feature, if you want to create a group, anyone can join a group or be invited, but if you want to create one, you'd have to be upgraded.
Ooh, my mind is swirling. I'm thinking I already got
all the options.
We also have travel mode. So if you want to look at another city before you go there, or just chat with the guys somewhere else, that's
kind of like you're on tour and like
Sniffies tour. And also we have a video chat feed called Live Play, and so you get more minutes for that to chat with people, which actually was super popular during COVID. Right when things shut down, we actually hurried really fast to launch this new feature and created this way. It was our video chat feature called Live Play, and people loved it. I mean, there was some very fun things happening across Live Play.
Ooh, okay. I can only imagine. Well, all right. Before we get to some fun things, Jen, who's watching us right now live, says going to. What does it say, Kodi? My glasses aren't on.
He's going to get on after work, and maybe he can find some action before going to bed. So we actually have a couple of people in the room that are going to use it very soon. I just told them to let us know what they think, and I think that's totally awesome. Lukey also asked, "Can we get notifications? Can people get notifications when one of the hookups is in the area?"
Oh, that's interesting. So like notifications is the biggest thing that we get asked for that we currently don't have the solution yet. And so because we're a web app, we can't force your phone to have a notification, specifically because of Apple. So Apple has made it so browsers can't do that. But we are working on, potentially launching a separate app or, another way to do that. And so there's a few ways we can do it. It's just a little bit complicated, but it's certainly like on our roadmap. But right now, I think the one plus of not having notifications is it actually does increase, I think, the speed of people wanting to hook up, because they're like, they don't want to, you kind of leave the app open and, but I'm the kind of person
and Eli, I don't know if you heard our earlier story, but the White House person that works for Melania Trump got fired because of Grindr. So if this person was smart enough, they wouldn't have been on Grindr. They would have just been on sniffies.com.
Exactly.
They wouldn't have gotten fired.
Look
I still wouldn't have wanted to sleep with them because they work for the Trump administration personally. And that's the problem. But they wouldn't have gotten fired if they had been on sniffies.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the new headline, y'all.
That should be your new marketing strategy. You wouldn't have got fired if you were on sniffies.
White House. Any other quotes before we? Kodi?
Right. Lukey just says that he's interested to see what's going to be in North Carolina, what they have.
Oh,
in
yeah.
North Carolina. So
awesome.
Yeah.
We got to ask you, Eli,
users in North Carolina.
Working for the site, I know it's hard. We often ask like porn people that work in production, are you currently single?
Ooh.
I am currly single, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Have you used your own app? Have you used your own app?
Have you used this?
Yes.
Other than for testing the system.
No, so the founder is actually married and in a close relationship with his like wonderful husband. And so but this was like, him kind of like reliving his younger years when he kind of launched this app. But so I'm definitely,
out there and about.
Other guys on the team, obviously, that use the app too. But I'm.
Are you on there now? Because I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Is this you?
I'm gonna go on there.
You gotta guess which one is me.
I know. This is great. Oh my God. I love it. We thought it'd be fun. I know we asked you, but Kodi, do you have a favorite? Because cruising is one of my favorite things, and I still go to cruising bars. Believe it or not, they still exist in certain cities. And so Kodi, do you have like a favorite cruising story?
I do. It's hard for me to pick just one. And I honestly, you know what? I try to date all the guys that I cruise. So it was really tough. But
that's the problem. You're not supposed to.
I know, right? I was at the bar and this super cute guy came up to me and we were chatting it up. And he invited me to go back to, it was near the end of the night. He invited me to go back to his apartment, but we met up with a couple of his friends. We picked up some beers and we ended up having an orgy back at his apartment with all of his friends. And it was a great night.
I love it. I love that story. I really love that because we have another story. Did you listen to the story and are you paying attention?
I was going to ask you.
I know. We have this other story that we're going to talk about on Do You Listen?
I do have a little cruising thing for you too.
Okay, tell us.
Go.
So I was just going to when you guys were talking about it earlier, I think an interesting thing this app has done is not only helped old locations that were always cruising grounds, but has actually started to create new cruising areas that were never a cruising spot. So one in New York is actually in McCarran Park in Williamsburg.
I live close to there.
You should check it out. Pretty much any weekday night you can get. But it's just so fun because people are taking spaces, and this is, obviously just a big open public park. But guys are now meeting there, and hopefully taking it to other places, I'm sure. But but it is cool, and I've heard that from multiple people too who realize that, and so it's great, especially in different cities when we talk to people how the cruising scene has changed, with sniffies.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I think about it, I definitely Prospect Park in Brooklyn is definitely a place. My friend gave me a tour of it recently and showed me where shenanigans could potentially be happening. I think my favorite one is in Mykonos, Greece, where if anyone's ever been there, there is Jackie O's, the bar that's right by the ocean, and there's this church of all things that's like perched on a hill right behind Jackie O's bar. And inevitably, if you go walking around this church, you will see guys cruising around. And I had one of my best cruising stories there where we hiked it down. Thank God we didn't like kill ourselves and like jump off the cliff by accident.
Okay.
And the sun was rising and we made our way down to have a little bit of personal moment. And the sun was rising, a boat was going by, and we were doing the deed, getting fucked and all that right there. And it was so hot. And it was like a total travel moment in Mykonos, in paradise, by a church, because I'm a former Catholic. And so,
it's religious experience too.
It was religious. I screamed at the top of my lungs. Well, this has been so great. Any other things you want to tell us about? First of all, how can we follow? Obviously, you can go to sniffies.com, but how can we follow you to get updates? Because it sounds like you're expanding.
Yeah, no, you can also follow us on social at sniffiesapp.com. And so that's just Sniffies, SNIFFIESAPP. And so that's our Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Our TikTok is actually just recently taken off. We did a really cool series with one of the best butt doctors in New York, if you ever need.
Dr. Goldstein?
Dr. Goldstein.
Yes.
What? We love Dr. Goldstein.
He's our doctor of choice here at TAGSPodcast.
He's the best. I mean, do you have a Dr. Goldstein ass? I do.
I do. I actually do. He's checked it out. He knows my insides. He told me he knows my insides.
Mine is brand new. It's about 4 months old.
Oh, virgin. I love it. We love him. I'm so glad you're with him.
Yeah.
He's the best. Yeah, absolutely. Bespoke Surgical. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Eli, can we follow you while we have you here? Where would you want people to follow you?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm Eli Joseph on Instagram if you want to find me there. So
Eli, we want to thank you so much for educating us more on sniffies.com. I'm definitely going to use it, and we will post all of the links on TAGSPodcast.com. Thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you.
Come back anytime with new updates.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Have a good night.
Absolutely. Good night.
Thank you. Same to you. And good night to Arnold behind you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I love it. We might have to end the show early because I might have to get on Sniffies right now.
You're getting on?
I'm just saying I'm not. I love it.
Do you need to stay at my house tonight? Because apparently McCarran Park is a big cruising spot now.
I will be there. I will be there soon. All right. Well, we've got to get into the rest of this show. And yes. I don't know, which one do you want to go out of the two topics? Because before we get to our favorite thirst trap, we only have time for one. You pick it.
Well, we brought up, oh man, but we've been skipping the other one the entire.
Maybe because it's not that good. You know what I mean?
I love the Leah Remini one.
Okay, then we're doing it. So you know what? That other one.
And you brought it up.
Yeah, we have this other topic, you all, that we've been. It just has been. It keeps getting booted out, but that's okay. It's probably because it's not very good. All right, this one is good. Leah Remini was on the Ellen show recently, and she called out Ellen, Kodi, for not listening to her story. You know, when you're talking to somebody, you can tell they're like glazed over.
Just 5 minutes ago.
So she kind of called out Ellen, but at the same time, she also said, "Oh my God, but I'm so happy to be on your show." And she was fanning out as she was also calling her out at the same time. Whether or not Ellen was really glossed over and not really paying attention, it did bring up the question, do you pretend to listen to people ever, Kodi?
Okay, I like to think that I'm a good multitasker and that I can do more than one thing at a time.
You know, I can tell on this show, we should say something to preface all of this, is on this show, we do a pre-production meeting, and anybody that knows that does a podcast or radio or interviewing is you have to be a good listener to be
for sure.
You just do. And I've trained myself that way, but I can tell that you are a good multitasker because you often look at, I can't see very well unless I put my glasses on, that you'll be typing to our listening audience, but I'm like, And I
do.
want to call you out and be like, bitch, are you listening to
Are
what I'm
you-
saying? But I know you're typing a question to our listening audience, so I can't be too mad.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
I am listening to you. I can tell people if I'm multitasking and you ask me what did I just say, I can repeat back to you what it might not land and it might not connect, but I can
Yeah.
tell you what you just said.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but I also have learned doing this show and being a life coach that listening is an active sport. You have to be present. You have to
Ooh, say
be
that again.
listening is
Listening
an active
active
sport.
sport.
Yes, you have to be present. You have to be able to take in the information because it's listening is like a bridge. On one side is the speaker, and the other side is the person that's listening, and it has to get across the bridge, and it has to connect to you, and you have to be able to make sense of it, basically. So,
What if the guy that is fucking you on top of you and is speaking in a different language? And like Brazil,
okay?
and
Oh,
you are
Portuguese,
just nodding your
yes.
Portuguese, and you're just nodding because you don't know what the hell he's saying, but you're like, keep doing it though.
Oh
Yes,
yes, oh yes.
there
Fala
are some
português. I think I said that correctly.
universal communications. Like,
Oh
in fact,
yes.
I would
Nonverbal communication.
back to
I'm a pro at that. Go ahead.
back to cruising. Cruising has a lot of communication that isn't verbal. It's
I
a lot
know. I'm so
of
bad at
eyes, eye contact, nods, vibes you get off of. It's all communication,
that.
but and it's listening to the other person's communication to know when it's okay to make that move. Let that you give so we give so much communication non-verbally in a cruising situation like we were just talking about that is really hot.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I agree with you. When somebody's flirting with me though, I'm kind of oblivious to it. So I know that I'm really bad at that part of the nonverbal communication. Are you a good listener though? Would you
I
describe
really
yourself as a good listener?
I really am. I actually
Yeah.
really I would. I'm not just saying that because so much of what I've done before I did all this, I worked in radio. Before I did this, I interviewed people and I prepped somebody once told me a good interviewer will do all their homework, prep, think of every question that the next interviewer isn't going to ask. And I got a lot of
Yeah.
accolades and then throw it out the door, Kodi, because
Oh
a really good
wow.
interviewer is prepped and ready, but then is in the moment. And I'll never
That's
forget, I got
so
to
important.
interview Quincy Jones.
Okay.
And I went into that interview and I was so prepped for Quincy. I was nervous. And, you know, when you get these interviews, oftentimes they have PR people that are really like, do not ask this, do not do that.
Zoned in.
And
Yeah.
these gatekeepers, if you will.
Yeah.
And I get in there and I was so prepared. He was so cool. He had this movie he was producing about a musician, and all he could focus on was my body. Like, oh my God, you work out, look at your muscles. And not that like it was a sexual
Yeah, not
thing,
sexual, but
but he
that's
was
awesome.
and I was flattered, but I was like, I want to get to my serious questions. And he did let me get there. But it was really, really cool. Simon Doonan if anyone knows Simon Doonan of window
I might know
dresser
that
of
name.
Barney's, he's married to
Oh.
Jonathan Adler, was commenting he said, what nice baubles you have. I had a lot of like jewelry and these beads. You have such nice baubles. And I'm like, yes, but I know all about you and I want to ask you all that. And he let me ask my questions. Yeah. I'm getting them to focus, really.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, no, I am a good listener. The one time I had a friend over this weekend, real quick story, that
Okay.
we used to work together and we just got out of a massage and we're sitting there and I'm blissed out. We're having margaritas. It's a beautiful day. And if anybody knows cities like New York, she was going on about her phone and look at this furniture and that. And I'm like, girl, I do not want to look at furniture right now. When the guy on a skateboard over there with the huge arms is catching my attention. And the waiter, I was salivating at our waiter. He was I tend to, if there's a hot boy and I'm out and about, I'm fantasizing and looking and thinking, wow, I wish I could lick his skin right now.
Wow, that's why you
Wow.
were listening to my story earlier.
Were we in that? I don't know, but yeah. So anyways, it's just funny. But in general, yes, if it's a beautiful day in New York and you're out and about,
And
I
there's a
may
hot guy
be,
there.
yeah. Here's our
No,
thirst
I
trap
love it.
of the week.
You put it in the you put it in the chat. Yes,
Put it in the
fabulous.
chat. And it's our favorite segment that we have to wrap up with. It's called Thursday Thirst Trap. Thirsty Thursday Thirst Trap. I don't know. I'm getting all confused now.
Yes.
Have some more wine, Steve. And it's our job to descriptively describe why these straight up gay porn took the best shot. And Kodi, we'll start with you. Who is your pick of the
we're
week?
gonna
I'll
start
post
with
this
me?
on I'll post this on our site this week and TAGSPodcast, and you can weigh in.
Okay, so I feel like I really feel like they are listening to us, our podcast on straight up gay porn, because the ass was fantastic this week. But my vote goes to, it was double the ass in the very first picture. So it was like, bam, 2 is better than 1. And
It was, I know. It was kind of
it
the
was the
first
very
shot.
first one too. Yeah.
Double for your trouble. Kind of crazy.
Austin Avery and Ako Stacks, and it's the 2 of them on the bed just presenting their asses to be
Assolicious.
to be plowed, to be whatever you can think of.
And they are looking back at you like,
they're looking back at you like, get into it right now. And
I'm into it.
It took me back to my cruising story from earlier. I was like, I'm in love. I'm here for it. I'm very first one. I'm in. So
Ass for days. I couldn't. I was real with you there. Shout out to Bruce Beckham, who's also in the list, who's been on one of our, he's a friend of mine and also was on one of our Tags Live episodes. 2 or 3 of them. You know, we have 305 episodes. So he's in the mix somewhere, and he couldn't be more gracious and graces us with so much of his time when he's on the show, and I love him for that. But no, the one that got mine was Diego Daniels, who, like I've said on the show before, this one didn't even require me to click on his link, which goes off into their Twitter account to get a little bit more.
My God.
First of all, shaved head.
Oh my God, done.
Body of death. Body of death. I mean,
we
that
never
hairy
agree, but this
chest, nipples that are like perfectly placed, body of death, abs for days, dick for days. It's the most beautiful shot I think I've ever seen. Tanned, shaved head, but scruffy. Just really effortless. I feel his face is giving effortless, but
so gorgeous.
It is, because the background couldn't be more just basic, but not so basic, like with dirtiness in the background. Just kind of a sage green.
You gotta clean up for your
sage green background that I'm not mad at, but really great. When I went on to his Twitter account, and a beautiful dick with a nice head on it, and it's just lengthy. But when I went on Diego Daniels, because as I often do to get a little more research for research purposes, I noticed that he you know how they often write, he wrote NYC October 8th through October 11th.
That's what Teddy just said.
All right, well, I'm the host. So I said, thank you, Teddy, for stealing my thunder down under. Because he's going to be in New York City October 8th through 11th. So I have this like secret, not even secret because I'm announcing it to everybody. But I want to like be like, hey, we just talked about you on the show. You're my favorite. And see where it gets me.
DM her.
I'm going to. Because why else would you write like you're on tour? Everyone's on tour these days. I want to be on tour. And so
and sniffy it up too.
I mean, I love sniffies, but I might just have to go direct and slide into some DMs and be like, hey, we just talked about you, and could I do a one-on-one interview? I don't know. That's where I'm going with that. I'm sticking with it. Anyways, this has been so much fun. We want to thank our special guest, Eli Martin of sniffies.com. Thank you so much. Check out sniffies.com, and you can watch this interview on our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/TAGSPodcast. I want to thank my co-host, Kodi Maurice Doggette. As
Thank you, darling.
always, we always have a
So much fun.
blast.
Yes.
Follow him. He's a life coach at KMD Coaching, but he also has a personal account with his chest out in effect, looking really good. Show us. Yep, there it is at Mr. Maurice. Mr. Maurice. Follow us or DM us for sex or relationship advice, or just to say hi or weigh in on hot sex topics at TAGSPodcast. And in the meantime, continue having hot Kodi gay sex.
Sex. Yes.
Yes.